I like how I'm 3 videos into this series and I already have to rename it. The guests are simply too good. Their points too valuable. Their insights too keen to fit an arbitrary 5-minute time limit. So welcome to the newly minted Conversations. In this episode, I have a person whose perspectives you simply must hear. Now, I've picked just a portion of our talk to share today, but don't worry, there's more. He and his wife have been blessed with self-described late-life twins. If you listen carefully, you may just hear them in the background. I describe him as a patriot. His over 3-decade military career saw him serving multiple tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other locations in the Middle East and around the world. He owns 15 dealerships, employs approximately 400 people, and has revenues of roughly $150 million a year. He's the current president of the Harley Davidson Dealer Advisory Council. He's the CEO of Windy City-Fox Motorsports. My guest in this episode, Ozzie Giglio. From your perspective as the president of the Harley Davidson DAC, what do dealers need to know about the motor company?
Wow, you sent me that question. I was reading it and sweating as I was reading it. It's a complex question, Mark, because I think that there's so much to know. First of all, I think that most people inside of the motor company, the employees themselves, and it's like any organization, it's an amalgamation of the people who work there. And so I think, dealers who don't have the opportunity to spend a lot of time interacting with motor company personnel, they don't get the same, unfortunately, they don't get the same feeling. And our environment is entirely changed. I mean, we used to have dealer shows where, the employees of the motor company spent a lot of time with dealers and dealers got to interact. And, we've really migrated away from that. So there's less, I think, intimacy between the motor company and the dealer. And frankly, I think that that's bad. And I think that hurts us. That doesn't mean we can't overcome it. But I think that there is just that an opportunity missed. And so I think what, the perspective is that there's one perspective from the motor company. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that there are a lot of well-intended people in the motor company who want to do the right thing for the brand. Yeah. And even for the dealers, frankly. It doesn't mean they always do it the right way or what needs to be done. But I think the intention is there. Sometimes they don't, I would argue that they don't necessarily take the right actions, but I believe that the dealers need to understand that the motor company, in my opinion, is well-intended. And I think that that's a big, you have to operate from that perspective, right? Always assume good intentions. My father taught me that a long time ago when you work with somebody. And I think that that's very true in the motor company's case currently. So I think that you have to operate from that perspective. But again, it doesn't mean that they take the right actions or do the right things. But I think, the fundamental basis of the things that they want to engage in are based in good intentions. And to me, that's what we could ask for in many respects, because sometimes you can change thought process, but you can't change bad intention.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, so then what do you think the motor company needs to understand about dealers?
That's a great question. It really is. And I will say this candidly and boldly. I think that the motor company really needs to know that the dealers truly are the retail experts in this business.
Yeah.
We have, and you're aware of this because you've been around, longer than I've been around, frankly. We have many sophisticated and exceptional retailers in our network. And I believe that the motor company needs to tap into that expertise going forward, because I think that our retail landscape is changing dramatically every day. I think COVID accelerated many of the changes that we were looking at in the business to begin with. And so I think that there has to be a recognition that there truly is retail expertise, in the dealer network. And I think that that's something that perhaps the motor company recognizes, but I'm not really sure they're thinking about it from that perspective. So,
Yeah, you know, when I did my college thesis, I did it on cross-cultural adaptation of sales curriculum for to be delivered in Australia. A snoozer, I know, but what my prof told me, he said, you can read about Australia, and you might be able, to adapt your curriculum, but you'll never really know what it's like to be an Australian because you're not.
right.
And I often think about, the motor company. They may never really know what it's like to be a retailer, because
And that's the critical piece, because as things change, as we talk about the brick and mortar retail interface and digital,
yeah,
I mean, to understand truly what that environment is like every day makes a tremendous difference about how you approach it.
yeah,
And I think that that's a piece that there has to, if we could get the motor company to truly get their arms around that, I think we would be in a different place. And again, a part of it is because, in the days of McCaslin, those guys were so close to the dealers.
yeah,
They rode with the dealers. We interacted with these people all the time. It was a much smaller group, I think. I don't know. There was just a closeness that for a long period of time we all had. And so I think that there was a little bit of a better understanding of what the dealer's life was like. I think we've lost that over the last 10 or 12 years. And I think it's essential. It really is. I don't know what it's like to be a manufacturer.
right,
I mean, I really don't.
yeah,
And I don't care how much time I spend with the motor company on the DAC and trying to understand their problems. I really don't. But they have to recognize that as well. And
yeah.
I think we'll both be a little bit better off if we understand each other's expertise.
Yeah, see the world from the other person's perspective
Yeah,
a bit more. Yeah.
exactly.
So if you had three words, if you had to choose three descriptors to describe today's retail environment, today's Harley Davidson retail environment, or
Oh,
today's motorcycle environment, what three words would you choose?
wow. I'm typically not at a loss for words, but that catches me by surprise. That's a great question.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly dynamic
yeah,
in the sense that I think that, we are facing a consumer that is exceeding, is growing in its intensity to purchase online and to have online experiences.
yeah,
So I think very dynamic in the sense of how we deal with that. Uh, I think experiential in the sense that we have got to provide experiences to the customers that they enjoy. That's our obligation, and I think that the retailers who are becoming successful in business are becoming very experiential in nature, and I think that that's a part of. I mean, that's really who we are, right? We are the epitome of creating experience, and I think that so for us, it's just recognizing that and making sure that we deliver on that experience. And then I would certainly say turbulent, because I think that we have seen an interesting last 5 to 7 years in terms of the growth of the industry. And I will tell you this, Mark. I mean, I think that all of the press is entirely wrong about Harley Davidson. The brand, I don't believe, has ever been more robust. If you just take a look at the volume of sales of total Harley Davidsons, I mean, forgetting about new,
yeah,
take into consideration the used that trade every year, it's more than 500,000 motorcycles that are sold are Harley Davidsons. You don't get that unless the brand is entirely robust. And so I think we have to embrace the fact that the brand itself is not dying. I think used is certainly out there in a big way. And so used is impacting new sales, of course, but the brand itself is robust. And I think we have to figure out how to deal with that level of enthusiasm that's in the marketplace.
Yeah, I agree. And what's interesting is that what we're going to have to do is embrace the new digital landscape. Customers want to look online. They want to engage via text message. They want to do that. But then what we've got to do, Ozzy, I believe, is pair it with your idea of an extraordinary in-person experience.
That's
So you
right.
get a one-two punch that they'll just never forget. You know,
Well, 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 right. If you deny the digital space, then you're denying the customer what they want, and that's not what we ought to be doing.
right.
Because, I like to look. I tell people this all the time. I mean, when I argue about this, it's like, oh, we shouldn't sell motorcycles online. It's like, well, I don't know. I like to buy stuff online.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that I don't want to go into a location and have a fantastic experience, whether it's something and try it on or whatever it is. But I think, the engagement between the digital environment and the brick and mortar environment have to interface. And you've got to give somebody a great experience and a reason why to come in. Otherwise, why not just buy
Yeah.
online?
Yeah. Well, and we just wrote about this in a dealer news piece, our dealer's obsolete. And I think what we ought to do is move all the boring stuff, all the transactional stuff, make that online. The credit app, the
Right.
documents, all that stuff should be online, and the wow should be in person.
At the store. Right.
Yeah. Um, I love your comment about how vibrant the Harley Davidson brand is, as evidenced by all of the pre-owned activity. How important are auctions to the Windy City Motorcycle Company?
Well, um, I hope nobody from NPA hears this, but they're critical. Obviously, I mean, we can't get enough product to sell. That's probably our biggest challenge today, is finding enough good product, I should say,
Yeah.
to sell. I mean, again, there was so much activity around the brand itself. And, if you kind of take a look at how much business was transacted through the dealer network last year in terms of used, I think it was something like 125 or 130,000 Harleys were sold through Harley Davidson dealers last year, which means that, the lion's share of motorcycles that are Harley Davidsons are sold outside of the dealerships, which means that we're not getting the bikes. And so auctions, I think, are a critical piece of having the opportunity to get them. They tend to get expensive, obviously, as most auctions do, but they still provide us the opportunity to see a lot of bikes and to buy a lot of bikes. But they're critical right now.
Yeah. Now, so bringing a larger share of that pre-owned activity into the dealerships, crucial, just absolutely crucial, I believe, to the health and future of our dealerships. How important is the new Harley Davidson certified, the new CPO program, going to
Yeah,
be for the Windy City Motorcycle Company?
I think it's an important program. I think it's a good program. I think that dealers have been calling for it for quite a while. I think that people recognize that there's value into having Harley Davidson dealers certify used, that are pre-owned bikes. I think that has a value to the customer. It keeps the customer's bike value up, which is, I think, the importance of it is it provides a benefit to the customer. And it certainly, provides a safe motorcycle. It provides a valuable motorcycle that they can rely on. So I think it's it's a program that we've needed for quite some time. I think we tried it maybe 10 years ago, if you remember, but it was very limiting in terms of the operation. And so I think it didn't really survive. And, this is a little broader program. It puts a lot of the requirements on the safety and the legality of the bike, that puts that on the dealer. And I think that's where it should be. Dealers do this every day for a living. And I think that it's important for them to, take Harley Davidson certified technicians who've been trained in the Harley Davidson program and, review these bikes in detail and then certify them. And I think that gives the public too some comfort that their motorcycle on a pre-owned basis is as good as a new. So
Yeah, I agree. I think it's an interesting program. Let's stay then with current events.
okay.
May I ask you a question about the current delays in Harley Davidson shipping?
Boy, well, you know, this is, I had a conversation yesterday with a Harley Davidson senior executive about this is a significant problem, obviously, and the delays are, I think they're impacting sales. I think they're impacting dealers' ability to meet their requirements for HD1 rewards. I think it's costing us money in terms of floor plan. So I think that there are multiple problems that have been created by the shipping issue. Having said that, and this is where I say it's, put yourself in the shoes of
Yeah.
I think the manufacturer is making every effort they can. Not that solves the problem. It really doesn't. That was the conversation yesterday. And, I received telephone calls and emails from countless dealers who are experiencing significant delays in deliveries, as we are. Actually, we're looking at really the total number of motorcycles that have been delayed in our network, and it's kind of staggering. But I think that this is a big problem, and it's particularly exacerbated by the fact that we've rolled back inventory, which I think is the right thing to do. I mean, I think that there was way too much inventory, new inventory in the system. I think that our new CEO did the right thing at the right time in terms of rolling back inventory, and I don't think that should change. Unfortunately, this becomes one of those problems that no one forecasted or anticipated, and it's a big issue. And I think we've seen some robust sales too in this early spring, and that's affecting us even more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to counsel people to be patient. I'm also trying to let them know that, I know indeed the manufacturer is truly working hard. I mean, I've seen some of the things that they've actually even posted online on behalf of dealers. And so the motor company is working hard to correct the problem. It's not an easy one, and it's unfortunate, and it's going to impact us, I think, for at least 2 or 3 more weeks.
Yeah.
So,
And there are, of course, things that dealers can do, taking deposits or perhaps interesting the customer into a high quality pre-owned bike. The real aw shucks will be that person who, because they can't get the 21 motorcycle of their dreams, takes their $30,000 or $40,000 and buys a bass boat.
yeah,
And
that's
them,
so right. Well, that was part of the conversation that I had yesterday. And so this is what I would say to that, Mark, because I think you're 100% right. And because I've seen this year after year, and it's not just on a delay in shipments. It's been, if we have a late season in terms of weather, what you typically get is maybe somebody who was interested in the motorcycle early on decides, well, shit, the season's over. I'm just going to go buy a bass boat, or I'm going to buy a Cobalt, and or I'm going to wait until 2022 because I want a new bike. And so I've actually seen that happen. I think this has happened so early, at least in the north, that we may not get that same diversion of funds if we fix this problem relatively quickly. If this thing bleeds on into April and May, then you're 100% right. I mean, it will definitely impact sales for the season, but I think we still have the opportunity to rescue this early on. So it's a big issue.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
I think dealers are trying to be patient. I think that actually most dealers are trying to understand that the motor company is addressing it. But unfortunately, we're going to be challenged with this for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
We didn't talk about this question, so if you have no comment, I absolutely, positively understand. What's your take on the potential Rumble On purchase of Ride Now?
Um, no, I think it's important to comment on that. So I think it makes sense. I mean, I will tell you that if I were Rumble On, I probably would have done the same thing. I mean, Rumble On is a platform that was, I mean, at least started out essentially as an amalgamator of used and trying to amalgamate used sales. I think the biggest problem is, if you compare it to, let's say, a CarMax owns their own cars or most of their cars. And so doing something when you're just amalgamating vehicles that you don't own, I think becomes very complicated. And I think Ride Now has, many locations and a lot of inventory that they can provide to Rumble On to sell online. So again, I think this deal entirely reflects I mean, it makes very real the notion that digital and brick and mortar will interface in a big way in the coming years. And I think there's no question in my mind that that's a direction that we're heading in. And it's not because we like it or we want it. It's because the consumer is definitely going in that direction.
Yeah.
And we've got to go with them. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to provide a great digital experience and a great experience in the brick and mortar location. And I think that the Rumble On deal with Ride Now is I mean, it is a signal that is the direction of the industry. And again, if I were them, I would have done the same thing. It makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. Thank you for your candor. Seeing the world from the other person's perspective. That idea alone can dramatically improve our relationships with OEMs, customers, and other dealerships. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Conversations. Stay tuned for more from Ozzie, Jerry Wilkie, and a slate of dealership talent you're going to have to see to believe. Now, go sell something, will ya?